If you're a single woman over 40 looking for Mr. Right and you're ready to learn practical dating strategies that don't waste your precious time, you're in the right place. In this episode, as an intuitive love coach, I'm talking about green flags in dating. So you can actually recognize the right guy when you're staring him in the face. So let's get started. Welcome to episode 5, How to Recognize Mr. Right. We're going to be talking about green flags today. What are all the great signs that the guy you've been on a date with has real potential to be the right guy for you? There's a couple of reasons I wanted to talk about this. It seems like everyone is really obsessed with red flags, which I totally understand, and it's very important that we address the red flags and things that you need to watch out for. That's equally important. But I find that we leave out the best part, and that's looking for what is, going well, and what are the signs that, hey, this has real potential. And if we don't have both, we're going to be constantly kind of like, oh no, this guy is doing XYZ and he's definitely wrong for me. And you're going to be all focused on the red flags, and it's going to make dating not fun, first of all, and it's going to carry into the energy and how you show up for the date as well. You'll kind of be really guarded, and I don't want that for you. So let's talk about what I mean when I say potential. Potential means, can you see yourself in a relationship with this guy? Which, I would describe as feeling at home, feeling at peace within yourself when you're with him. Those are some really great green flags. Like, how do I feel? Can you see yourself forming a best friendship kind of vibe and so much more so that you can share your life with this person and feel connected? And do you feel that this guy has the potential to give you the support so that you can be your true self and live your purpose and make you feel fulfilled? And of course, we make ourselves feel fulfilled. I'm saying that it's wonderful to have someone by your side to help lift you up in times when you need it. And this is where you want to be in your mind, your mindset. You want to be focused on that potential. So just feeling into that right now, like, oh, what would potential mean for me specifically? Because you might have some very specific things around relationships and what potential means to you. And so let's go into the mindset part of this. I want to, of course, say that, if anyone's thinking, well, how am I supposed to tell right away, like within 5 minutes or on a first date, if he is Mr. Right? You cannot tell right away. I'm not saying that. But you can tell who is worth more of your time. If you take it in small bites, small chunks like that, and think, would I want to spend another hour with this guy? Would I want to go on a second date? Do I even want to finish this date that I'm on, this first date? And you want to ask yourself kind of internally, and you can just do a check-in with yourself during the date. It's really easy. Like, how am I feeling? Is this guy worth more of my time? And that can be your marker and how you think of potential in the moment. So overall, with mindset, I want you to talk about within yourself, what are the possibilities? That's one way to think of it. Do I have the willingness to see where this goes? And sometimes if you're like, no, I'm not even willing to finish off this date, I'm going to just get the check and leave, then you don't have the willingness, which is completely fine. I'm not judging or saying, this is completely up to you of what your willingness is. Do I have the willingness? And then you want to focus on mindset of feeling like there's an abundance of possibilities. There are plenty of opportunities. If he's not the right guy, there's the next guy. And if you don't have that, if you have the opposite of that, I've talked about this, some of the limiting beliefs that we can get really stuck in is around scarcity. Like, oh, at my age, there's no good guys out there. no one's going to want me. It's this, slim pickings, all of these things is the opposite of the abundance of possibilities. And as soon as we get into that limiting belief mindset, we start to think, well, okay, this guy's not really that great. I don't feel that great around him, but I don't have that many choices. And we don't want to get into that mindset. So looking at the abundance of possibilities. Do you feel in some sense there's an open path to the life you truly desire? So does it feel spacious? Does it feel like, well, yeah, I feel like we could be heading in the same direction? Or it seems like from what he says that we could, go in the same direction together. So is there any kind of hint of an open path leading to the life that you truly desire? For example, the opposite of that would be like someone saying, I like to stay home and I hate traveling. And if you picture your life down the road or even in the near future to be going to all kinds of amazing places, the path is closed. Like the two of you are not going to have that path towards the life you desire. So think of it as, is there an open path? And then the last part of the mindset piece would be looking forward to getting to know them. Do you feel that sense that, it'd be great to have some more time with him? And are you able to express yourself authentically and feel confident to do that in a way that feels safe, in a way that's, appropriate for how well you know the person? I'm not talking about oversharing. I'm just saying in an appropriate sense, do you feel like you can open up and talk about yourself authentically? So these are all the mindset pieces that you can really kind of give yourself a check-in around. And this would be like the preparation before you go on the date. You kind of think of these things. And then when you go into the date, you're like, okay, I have these things in mind. Possibilities, willingness, abundance, all of these things we talked about. And here's some, affirmations that you can use as well to really focus on, what's going to be the best thing for you moving forward. For example, you can say this to yourself or write down, my intuition is stronger than ever, especially when it comes to love. My intuition is stronger than ever, especially when it comes to love. My intuition makes my decisions. I'll repeat that again. My intuition makes my decisions. I go after what I truly want. I go after what I truly want. So these are some really powerful affirmations that you can write down and keep, by your bedside and go into that, or do, read them through before you go on a date. And just to give you an example, the opposite of that these affirmations would be, my insecurities make my decisions. My communication lines are not open, and I'm afraid to share my dreams and desires. And that's not like we go out looking for those kind of things, but sometimes we get stuck in those patterns again, and we're letting our insecurities and our fears and that scarcity kind of mindset make our decisions around dating. So next I want to move into some emotions that you can feel into and just check in with yourself to prepare yourself for this, to be open to these green flags and to be focused on the green flags. So a green flag for you and how you feel is when you go on the date, you will feel safe. You'll feel calm. You'll have like a grounded excitement. So you're like, oh my God, I'm so excited I'm on this date. This guy seems amazing. But you feel like both feet are on the ground. You don't feel kind of that really, that high that you can get. Like, oh my God, this guy, he's the one. And just feeling yourself spinning out of control. And it's more like your nervous system is in fight or flight versus your heart is fluttering, but your feet are firmly planted on the ground. So that's how you can think about it. And then that feeling of that openness, the lightness in your chest, and I would describe that as hope for the future in a way that feels good. Like you're not feeling desperate, like, oh my God, this is my last chance. I have to make this work. this guy is going to fit into all my green flags and I'm going to stuff him into a, square peg in a round hole. No, you have lots of opportunities. Again, remember the abundance of possibilities. And so the feeling sense would be you're feeling hopeful and lighthearted and open-hearted for the future. And that feels really, really good. So think of it this way. All of these emotions that I'm describing feel good. It's funny how simple that is, but sometimes we often mistake a lot of feelings and emotions we have before, during, and after a date that don't actually feel good. They're kind of like, oh my God, I've had 10 chocolate bars and that's how I feel. I feel buzzing. I feel chaotic. I feel just ungrounded. And that doesn't feel good. So think about those emotions. Do I feel safe? Do I feel grounded? Am I hopeful and open for the future? Those are some emotions that will give you the sign of a green flag. So those are your green flags. And then moving into the action piece, you want to be focused on going in the direction of what you want and who you want. Make time for the guy that has potential, that has the green flags. Drop the guy who has the red flags, the deal breakers. We're going to talk about that in the next episode. We're going to talk about red flags because, as I said, it's very important. But I want you to mainly be focused on making room for and having your attention and intention flowing towards the guy with the green flags or looking for the green flags as opposed to being too focused on the red flags. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so let's go into some really practical exercises on how to figure out what are your green flags. In other words, who is your Mr. Right and how do you break it down? So I do this exercise a lot with people and I've done it as a free challenge multiple times and it's really, really helpful and the feedback I've received is very powerful just doing this exercise. So you can do it right now just, by feeling into it, checking in with yourself. If you want to pause this and do it, as a journal exercise or do it after the episode, you can definitely do that. But I'm just going to go through these pieces for you first. So to find your green flags for your Mr. Right, I want you to think about the 5 main characteristics or traits of your Mr. Right. And what do I mean by that? So in this exercise, you're looking at Mr. Right's personality. You want to bring him to life so you'll easily recognize him in the wild. Examples would be, that he's emotionally open. It could be even more grounded, like he's reliable. He shows up on time. He doesn't cancel at the last minute. He's fun. He seems to be really open to a lot of adventures. Maybe he's affectionate. That can be a characteristic or a trait. Maybe he's sexy, just something really sensual about him. So these are the characteristics and traits. And think about your top 5. This is sort of like the make or break. These are what you really, really, really want in your Mr. Right. And I don't want you to judge them. I don't want you to get all wrapped up in like, well, this isn't really possible. I've never met a guy like this. Maybe I want too much. Just set aside all of those, limiting beliefs that come flooding in when you try to do this exercise and just do it and get the top 5 without any judgment. Don't stop yourself. Don't censor yourself. The second part, once you have that, is the 5 main behaviors. I want you to really ground this into reality in terms of your day-to-day life interacting with someone, because we often leave this out. It's like there's the fantasy of like, he's going to be so affectionate and amazing and thoughtful, and you don't think about the day-to-day stuff like behaviors. So what are your top 5 behaviors that are green flags for you for Mr. Right? Behaviors are an absolute turn on for you, and they're usually very obvious. So for example, he brings you flowers for no reason, or he brings flowers on the first date. He calls when he says he will, and he shows up on time. He makes plans with you consistently and prioritizes spending time with you. So this is where you're kind of drilling down a little deeper than the first one, because the first one is really the overall personality traits and characteristics, whereas this is how, the second part is how this plays out in real life. Like, how does this guy act? Is he very thoughtful and nice to the servers when you go to a coffee shop without flirting? So maybe you're like, I've been with guys who flirt with women right in front of me, and that's like an absolute deal breaker. So the opposite of that is he would have complete respect for you. He would be completely attentive and focused on you and make you feel like you're very special when you're with him. So that would be a behavior. So for example, ask yourself, how would that play out? Well, he'd sit down with you at the coffee shop and he'd be only looking at you. He wouldn't be wandering eyes all over the place. He'd be asking about you, totally focused. Even if, there's an amazingly beautiful woman walks by, he's still looking at you. That would be a behavior or an action of Mr. Right. All right, now we get into the really important stuff. So I want you to think about the top 5 feelings or emotions that you have when you're with Mr. Right or when you think of Mr. Right. So this is really hands down most important because it's really eye-opening. Again, it's kind of like you move past all those things where you're like airy-fairy and going, oh my God, this guy's the one, etc. And then if you really sit down and think about how you feel when you're with him, maybe it's that chaotic, unsafe, fight or flight type of buzzing feeling that you have with him. And that doesn't feel that good. So when you sit down and think about it, it's like, I actually don't even feel that good around him. And that's not a green flag at all. So how do you feel in your body when you see him pulling into your driveway, or when you see him pulling up to the coffee shop, or when you say goodnight on the phone? And this is not, I want you to make this very important distinction. This is not how you feel about him. How you feel about him could be completely different. And that's why it gets really tricky. How you feel about him could be like, oh, swoon, I can't stop thinking about him. And I just can't, be without him. And I have to talk to him all the time. And I'm just so in love with him, or whatever it is, whatever version of that there is. But then, like I said, how you feel in your body when you're around him, or when you think about him, or you're like, oh my God, I haven't heard from him in an hour, and your body starts panicking, or, you're out with him at a restaurant and you feel very nervous, very ungrounded, very insecure, very doubting of yourself. That's the real indicator. And I want you to make sure that you think that way. So how do you feel in your body when you see him? How do you feel in your body when you think about him? So when he kisses you and says you look beautiful, maybe you feel happy, safe, adored, positive, open, excited for the future. These are all the green flag feelings you want to have. And of course, insert your own here. And now I want you to take all of these things, the characteristics, the traits, the behaviors, and your feelings about Mr. Right, and make it a list. And then voila, you have your list of green flags. See how simple that is? And it's a very powerful list. And as I've said, tons of people have gone through this exercise, this version of exercises, and have said how powerful it is. So even if you kind of roll your eyes and go, well, this seems kind of dumb, when you actually dial down into it and write it out and see it as a list, it's kind of like your Mr. Right manifesto. This is what you want. These are the things you want, not the things you don't want. I want you to focus on what you want. And of course, we're going to, do next episode on what to be aware of, like the red flags, but I want you to start with this one. And refer to your list when you go on dates before you go on them. Be on the lookout for those green flags. Train yourself to see the possibilities, to see, the excitement, the path to the future, to be able to see that. And I would recommend you start from this space rather than being focused on the red flags. But that being said, red flags are also very important, of course. That's why I'm going to cover it in the next episode. So don't miss it. I hope this has been really helpful for you. And until next time, remember, love is closer than you think.